The message came through the ancient deep space channels at exactly 0347 Galactic Standard Time. Admiral Tejo was reviewing battle reports from the Outer Rim when his communication officer interrupted him. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission." "On the old frequency bands?" said Lieutenant Dongmin, his voice uncertain. "The ones that haven't been used in over 3,000 years. Tejo looked up from his datapad. The old frequencies were considered dead technology, relics from a time when the galaxy was young and mysterious races still wandered the void. No one used them anymore. No one alive anyway. "Put it through," Tejo ordered, his curiosity getting the better of him. The main screen flickered to life. But instead of showing a face or figure, it displayed only darkness filled with slowly moving text in the ancient galactic script. The translation appeared below in modern standard. "To the galactic hegemony and all who claim dominion over the stars, the blue world in the Sol system is under our protection. Any who harm it will face consequences beyond imagination. This is your only warning. Do not test our resolve." The message ended as abruptly as it began. The screen went dark, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. "Did we trace the source?" Tejo asked. "No, sir," Dongmin replied, checking his instruments again. "The signal appears to have come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Our computers can't make sense of it." Tejo stood and walked to the large viewing window that showed the vast expanse of space. Behind him, his officers waited for orders. He had ruled this sector of space for 15 years, bringing dozens of worlds under hegemony control. He had seen primitive civilizations make empty threats before. This was just another backwater species trying to sound important. "What do we know about this Sol system?" he asked his tactical officer. Captain Minsu stepped forward with his own datapad ready. "It's a small system in the outer reaches, sir. 9 planets, one of them inhabited. The locals call it Earth. Our scouts report that they have basic space technology, but nothing that could threaten us. They've barely reached their own moon. Population? Approximately 8 billion beings. They appear to be divided into several hundred political groups that fight among themselves regularly. No unified government or military." Tejo smiled. It was always the same story. Primitive worlds, divided and weak, making grand threats they couldn't back up. The so-called Watchers who sent this message were probably just some local religious group trying to scare away outsiders. "Resources?" Tejo continued. "Extensive, sir. The planet is rich in rare minerals, particularly crystalline deposits that we use for our faster-than-light drives. The system also sits at a strategic point between 3 major shipping routes. Control of that system would give us significant advantages in trade and military movement." This made Tejo's decision easy. The hegemony needed those resources, and they needed that strategic position. Some mysterious message wouldn't change that. "Sir," said Minsu hesitantly, "there is one more thing." The message mentioned Watchers. That term appears in some of our oldest historical records. Tejo turned around. "What kind of records?" "Ancient ones, sir, from before the hegemony was founded. The records speak of a race called the Watchers who once controlled vast portions of the galaxy. But they vanished over 10,000 years ago. Most historians consider them to be myths." "Myths don't send messages," said Lieutenant Haijin from the communications station. "Myths also don't threaten the hegemony," Tejo replied firmly. "Even if these Watchers were real once, they're clearly gone now. Someone is just using their name to try to frighten us." He returned to his command chair and activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Tejo. We have received intelligence about a new world ripe for inclusion in the hegemony. Prepare for immediate departure to the Sol system." Minsu stepped closer to the Admiral's chair. "Sir, shouldn't we investigate this warning first? Send a small scout force to assess the situation?" Tejo's eyes hardened. "Captain, I've conquered 47 worlds for the hegemony. I've heard every threat, every bluff, every desperate plea from primitive species trying to avoid their destiny. This is no different." "But sir, the technology required to send a message on those frequencies could have been stolen," Salvaged or bought from traders, Tejo cut him off. I won't be scared away by ghost stories and ancient legends. The bridge fell silent again. Tejo could sense his officer's uncertainty, but he had made his decision. The hegemony had built its empire by taking what it needed, when it needed. They had never backed down from a fight, and they weren't going to start now. Sir, said the navigation officer, the Sol system is 6 days away at maximum speed. And then we leave in 2 hours. I want the Third Fleet ready for full deployment. Tejo stood and began walking toward his private quarters, and I want detailed battle plans for planetary subjugation prepared before we arrive. As the admiral left the bridge, his officers exchanged worried glances. Minsu had served under Tejo for 8 years and had never seen him dismiss a potential threat so quickly. The captain pulled up the ancient records on his personal data pad and began reading about the Watchers. The stories were vague and contradictory, but they all agreed on one thing. The Watchers had possessed technology that made them nearly godlike in their power. They could appear and disappear at will, could see across vast distances of space and time, and could grant incredible abilities to other races, but the records also said they had vanished without explanation. Some stories claimed they had ascended to a higher plane of existence. Others said they had been destroyed by their own power. A few suggested they had simply grown tired of the galaxy and left for distant stars. Minsu closed the files and looked out at the stars. In 6 days they would find out which story was true, down in the ship's war room. Tactical specialists were already working on invasion plans. They had done this so many times that it had become routine. Orbital bombardment to soften defenses, ground troops to secure key positions, and then the long process of breaking the local population's will to resist. Lieutenant Call Sojin was reviewing targeting data for Earth's major cities when something caught her attention. The planet's defensive capabilities were almost non-existent by galactic standards, but there was something odd about their technology development. These humans seem to advance very quickly, she said to her assistant. Look at these timelines. They went from basic flight to space travel in less than a century. Primitive species often develop rapidly once they discover certain principles, her assistant replied. It's not unusual. But Sojin wasn't convinced. She had studied dozens of primitive worlds, and none had shown this pattern of accelerated development. It was almost as if someone had been guiding their progress. She shook her head and returned to her targeting calculations. In 6 days, it wouldn't matter how quickly the humans had developed. They would face the full might of the galactic hegemony. And no primitive world had ever withstood that force. The Third Fleet began its journey toward Earth, confident in their superior numbers and technology. None of them suspected that they were walking into a trap that had been prepared for thousands of years, or that their warning had come from beings who remembered when the galaxy was young and full of wonders that the hegemony could never imagine. The Third Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Tejo stood on his command bridge, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on the main screen. Earth looked peaceful from this distance, with white clouds swirling over its continents and oceans. Scan the system, Tejo ordered. I want to know about every ship, every satellite, every piece of metal floating in this space. Lieutenant Dongmin worked at his sensor station. Sir, I'm detecting approximately 12,000 artificial objects in orbit around the planet. Most appear to be primitive communication satellites and space stations. No military vessels that match our database. What about their planetary defenses? Basic missile systems, sir. Some energy weapons, but nothing that could penetrate our shields. Their most advanced weapons appear to be nuclear missiles with chemical propulsion. Tejo nodded with satisfaction. It was exactly what he had expected. A primitive world with primitive defenses, making empty threats through ancient communication systems they probably didn't even understand. Send the standard surrender demand, he commanded. Give them 1 hour to respond. The message was broadcast on all Earth frequencies in their dominant languages. It was simple and direct. Surrender immediately or face destruction. The hegemony. had used the same message on dozens of worlds. Usually, the local governments tried to negotiate or buy time. Sometimes they refused outright. The result was always the same, but Earth's response was different within 10 minutes. Every nation on the planet had somehow coordinated their answer. Not just the major powers, but every single government from the largest empires to the smallest island nations. They all said the same thing: we will never surrender. Come and try to take our world. Captain Minsu frowned at his communication panel. Sir, this is unusual. How did they coordinate a unified response so quickly? Our intelligence reports show these humans are constantly fighting among themselves. Fear makes strange allies. Tejo replied, prepare for orbital bombardment. Target their major population centers first. Once we break their spirit, the rest will fall in line. Commander Sojin took her position at the weapons console. She had done this many times before. A few precise strikes on important cities would show the locals that resistance was hopeless. Most species surrendered after seeing their capitals turn to ash. Beginning bombardment sequence, Sojin announced. Targeting coordinates for their largest urban centers. The first energy beams lanced down from the hegemony ships toward Earth's surface, but something impossible happened. The beams struck energy shields that appeared around the cities just moments before impact. The shields flared bright blue and absorbed the attacks completely. What? Sojin stared at her instruments in disbelief. Sir, they have defensive shields. That's not possible. Our scans showed no such technology. Fire again, Tejo ordered, his confidence shaking slightly. Increase power to maximum. The second bombardment was 3 times stronger than the first. The energy beams should have been able to crack a moon in half. But again, the shields held. Not only did they hold, but they seemed to grow stronger with each hit. Sir, called Lieutenant Dongmin from his station, I'm detecting massive energy readings from the planet's surface. Something is powering those shields, but I can't identify the source. Before Tejo could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the bridge. Red warning lights flashed as the ship's defensive systems activated automatically. Incoming fire, shouted the tactical officer. Multiple contacts rising from the planet's surface. On the main screen, they could see dozens of sleek craft launching. From Earth, they moved unlike anything in the hegemony's databases, seeming to dance through space rather than simply flying through it. Their weapons were unlike anything the aliens had seen before, beams of pure white light that cut through vacuum like solid objects. The first hegemony ship to be hit simply vanished. Not destroyed, not exploded, it was there one moment and gone the next, as if it had never existed at all. Shields up! All ships, evasive maneuvers. Tejo commanded, but his voice carried a note of panic he had never felt before. The Earth ships moved through the hegemony formation like they knew exactly where each alien vessel would be before it got there. They dodged return fire effortlessly and struck with surgical precision. In 15 minutes, the Third Fleet had lost a quarter of its ships. This is impossible, muttered Captain Minsu. Their technology was primitive. Our scouts confirmed it. How are they doing this? Lieutenant Call Young-soo, who commanded the ground assault forces, received orders to begin planetary invasion. His transport ships filled with soldiers began their descent toward Earth's surface. They had conquered 47 worlds using the same tactics. Land troops in key locations, secure important facilities, capture local leaders, but as Young-soo's ships entered Earth's atmosphere, they found themselves flying into a nightmare. Human aircraft appeared from nowhere, moving in ways that defied the laws of physics. They flew straight up at impossible speeds, turned corners that should have torn them apart, and fired weapons that seemed to bend space itself. All units, we are under heavy attack, Young-soo radioed to the fleet. The humans have technology we've never seen before. They're not fighting like primitives. They're fighting like they know our every move. On the ground, the situation was even worse. Lieutenant Tianwu led the first wave of ground troops toward what their intelligence sighed was an important military base. But when they arrived, they found it empty except for a single human soldier standing in the center of the compound. The soldier was a young woman, who couldn't have been more than 25 years old. She wore simple combat clothing and carried a weapon that looked like a modified energy rifle. She stood completely still, waiting for them. "Surrender," Hien Wu called out in the local language. "You are outnumbered 50 to 1, the human woman smiled. "No," she said calmly, "you are—" Suddenly the empty base came alive. Humans appeared from positions that shouldn't have been able to hide anyone. They moved through the alien soldiers, like ghosts, striking with precision and vanishing before return fire could find them. But it wasn't just their tactics that were wrong. The humans themselves were wrong. They moved too fast, reacted too quickly, and seemed to know where each alien would be before the alien knew it himself. Hien Wu watched his soldiers fall one by one. The humans weren't just fighting, they were learning. Each time his troops tried a new tactic, the humans adapted immediately. It was like fighting an enemy that could see the future. "Fall back," he ordered, but there was nowhere to retreat to. The humans had surrounded them without him noticing. His entire force was wiped out in less than 10 minutes. Back in orbit, Admiral Taeho received report after report of impossible defeats. Every ground assault team was destroyed. Every bombing run was stopped by shields that shouldn't exist. Every tactical advantage the hegemony possessed was being turned against them. "Sir," said Minsu quietly, "I think we should consider retreat. This isn't going as planned." Taeho stared at the tactical display. Half his fleet was gone, and the other half was being picked apart by ships that moved like living things. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were winning. "No," he said through gritted teeth. "I will not be defeated by a primitive world. Send word to the 2nd and 4th fleets. Tell them to come immediately." "Sir, that will take days. We might not last that long." "Then we hold until they arrive. The hegemony does not retreat." But even as he spoke, Taeho knew something had gone terribly wrong. The humans were supposed to be helpless. Instead, they were fighting like they had been preparing for this war their entire lives, on Earth's surface, in a deep underground facility. That hadn't existed the day before. A figure in ancient robes watched the battle through instruments that could see across dimensions. The Watchers had kept their promise. Earth would be protected, and the humans were finally ready to take their place among the stars. The real war was just beginning. 3 days had passed since the first attack, and Admiral Taeho could barely recognize his once mighty fleet. What remained of the 3rd Fleet hung in space around Earth like wounded animals, trying to stay out of range of the impossible human. "Weapons, status report," Taeho demanded as he entered the bridge. His uniform was wrinkled and stained. He hadn't slept properly since the fighting began. Captain Minsu looked up from his console with tired eyes. "We've lost 60% of our ships, sir. The humans keep launching new vessels from their planet, and each one is more advanced than the last." "That's impossible. Where are they building these ships?" "We don't know, sir. Our orbital scans show construction facilities that weren't there yesterday. It's like they're building them faster than we can count them." Taeho walked to the main viewing screen and stared at Earth. The planet looked the same as when they had arrived, but he knew it had become something else entirely. Something that defied everything he understood about technology and warfare. "Sir," called Lieutenant Dongmin. "From communications, we're receiving a transmission from the human planet." "Put it through." The screen flickered and showed a human male who appeared to be in his 40s. He wore a simple military uniform with no fancy decorations. Behind him, Taeho could see what looked like a command center filled with technology that hurt his eyes to look at directly. "I am General Kijin of the Earth Defense Force," the human said calmly. "You have 3 options. Surrender and be treated according to the laws of war. Leave our system immediately and never return, or continue fighting and be destroyed completely." Taeho stepped forward. "I am Admiral Taeho of the Galactic Hegemony. Your threats don't frighten me. We have reinforcements coming that will crush your pathetic world." Kijin smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Admiral, your reinforcements are already here. Look behind you." Taeho spun around to face the tactical display. His blood turned cold. The 2nd and 4th fleets had indeed arrived, but they weren't Moving to attack Earth, they were fleeing in all directions, their ships scattered and broken. What happened to them? Taeho whispered. We happened to them, Kijun replied. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into our defensive grid. Most didn't survive the first 30 seconds. On his instruments, Minsu was confirming the impossible truth. Sir, I'm reading massive debris fields at the system's edge. The other fleets ... they're gone. Kijun continued speaking from the screen. We know you've been watching us for months, Admiral. We know about your scout ships, your spy satellites, your intelligence gathering. What you didn't know is that we've been watching you too. Impossible. Our stealth technology is perfect. Your stealth technology is 3,000 years old, Kijun said. We've been studying it since your first ship entered our space. We've been preparing for this war since before your empire was born. Dr. Yunbai, the fleet's chief scientist, had been working around the clock to understand what was happening. She burst onto the bridge carrying a datapad and looking terrified. Admiral, I need to speak with you immediately, she said, glancing nervously at the human on the screen. Speak freely, Doctor. Yunbai hesitated, then took a deep breath. Sir, I've been analyzing the captured human soldiers from our failed ground missions. Their biology is ... wrong. Wrong how? Their neural patterns show enhancement that shouldn't be possible with their technology level. But it's not artificial enhancement. It's like their brains are naturally connecting to some kind of vast network. Kijun nodded approvingly from the screen. Dr. Yunbai is very observant. Yes, we are connected. Every human on Earth shares knowledge, experiences, and tactical awareness through quantum neural links. When one of us learns something, we all learn it instantly. Taeho felt his mouth go dry. That's impossible. No species has ever achieved true collective consciousness. No species you know of, Kijun corrected. But we had good teachers. The screen flickered and changed to show views from around Earth. Human cities that had been targeted for bombardment were not only intact but were expanding before their eyes. New buildings rose from the ground in minutes. Massive factories produced ships and weapons at speeds that violated the laws of physics. How? Taeho asked weakly. The same way we knew you were coming, Admiral. The same way we knew exactly where your reinforcements would arrive. The same way we know what you're thinking right now. Kijun leaned forward. We can see through time itself. Lieutenant Call, Sojin, who had been silent throughout the exchange, suddenly spoke up. Sir, I'm detecting energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. The humans aren't just using advanced technology. They're using principles of physics that we don't understand. On the screen, Kijun gestured to someone off camera. Show them the factories. The view changed to reveal vast underground complexes that stretched for kilometers beneath Earth's surface. Machines that looked more like living organisms than mechanical devices were creating ships, weapons, and equipment at impossible speeds. The technology was so advanced that it seemed almost magical. We call them molecular assemblers, Kijun explained. They can build anything we need from basic matter. A starship in an hour, a city in a day, an army in minutes. General Youngsu, who had lost most of his ground forces in the initial assault, stared at the screen in horror. Sir, if they can build armies in minutes, then every soldier we kill will be replaced before we can count the loss. Exactly, Kijun said. But we don't just replace our losses, General. We improve on them. Every battle makes us stronger. Every weapon you use against us becomes part of our knowledge. Every tactic you try teaches us how to fight you better. Admiral Taeho watched his tactical display as more human ships appeared around Earth. Not just a few, but hundreds. Then thousands. Each one was different from the others, as if the humans were experimenting with new designs in real time. This is a nightmare, muttered Captain Minsu. They're not fighting a war, they're playing with us. Double quotes. Kijun heard him and nodded. Captain Minsu is correct. This isn't a war for us. It's a test. Our teachers wanted to see if we were ready to take our place in the galaxy. Your attack gave us the perfect opportunity to prove ourselves. Your teachers? Teho asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. The ones who sent you the warning, Admiral. The ones you chose to ignore. Kichun's expression became serious. They've been preparing us for this moment for thousands of years. Every war we've fought among ourselves, every scientific discovery, every cultural advancement, it was all part of the plan. Dr. Yunbai looked at her instruments and gasped. Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy buildups all across the human planet. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be huge. Kijun smiled again. We're not planning anything, Doctor. We're remembering. Our teachers left us gifts, hidden in our DNA, waiting for the right moment to awaken. That moment is now. The screen went dark, leaving the bridge in silence. Around Earth, the human ships began moving in perfect formation, not toward the remaining hegemony vessels, but toward the edge of the solar system. Where are they going? Asmin-Dashu-Date-Ho realized the terrible truth. They're not defending anymore. They're going on the attack. The tide hadn't just turned. It had become a tsunami that would sweep across the galaxy, and the galactic hegemony was about to learn what it meant to be on the wrong side of evolution itself. The space around Earth began to shimmer like water in the sunlight. Admiral Teho watched from his damaged flagship as reality itself seemed to bend and twist. His instruments screamed warnings about energy levels that should have torn the solar system apart, but nothing exploded. Instead, something far more terrifying happened. Ships appeared, not human ships built in the factories they had seen, but vessels so ancient and massive that they made the hegemony's largest battleships look like children's toys. They were dark as the void between stars, covered in strange symbols that hurt to look at directly. The ships had been there all along, hidden by technology that could fool even the most advanced sensors. Sir, whispered Lieutenant Dongmin, his voice shaking, those ships, they're not showing up on any of our databases. The computer can't even measure them properly. Captain Minsu was staring at his tactical screen in disbelief. Admiral, those vessels are over 50 kilometers long. Some of them are bigger than small moons. How were they hidden from us? Before Teho could answer, the largest of the ancient ships began to change. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, and sections of its hull became transparent. Through the clear areas, they could see vast spaces filled with technology that seemed to be alive. Pulsing with soft light, a new voice came over the communication system, but this one was different from the human general they had spoken to before. This voice was older, deeper, and carried a weight that made every person on the bridge feel small and insignificant. Admiral Teho of the Galactic Hegemony, the voice said, I am High Watcher Yun. You were warned not to come here. You chose to ignore that warning. Now you will learn why that was a mistake. The main screen flickered to life, showing a figure that was clearly not human but looked similar enough to be disturbing. She was tall and elegant, with pale skin that seemed to glow from within. Her eyes were completely black, like looking into deep space, and when she moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around her. You're real, Teho said, his voice barely above a whisper. The Watchers are real. Dayun nodded slowly. We have always been real, Admiral. We simply chose not to interfere with the younger races as they learned to walk among the stars. But Earth is special. The humans are special. They are our children, and you have attacked our children. Dr. Yunbai stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. The legends say your people vanished 10,000 years ago. Where did you go? We didn't go anywhere, Doctor. We simply stopped revealing ourselves to races that were not ready to understand what we are. Yushtered, and the screen showed images of the Milky Way galaxy, but not as they knew it. This version showed streams of energy connecting every star system, patterns of light that formed a vast network across space. We became part of the galaxy itself, watching and guiding from within the fabric of space and time. The images changed to show Earth's history, but not the version the hegemony knew from their studies. This showed humans being visited by beings of light throughout their development. The construction of ancient monuments that seemed impossible for primitive people to build. The sudden leaps in human technology and culture that had always puzzled galactic historians. "You've been guiding them," said Captain Minsu in realization. "All this time you've been preparing them for something." "For this," Duyun replied. "For the day when they would be tested and found worthy to inherit what we have built." She turned her black eyes directly on Admiral Tejo. "Your empire has ruled through fear and oppression for 3,000 years. You take what you want and destroy what you cannot control. This ends now." Tejo tried to maintain his composure, but his hands were shaking as he gripped the arms of his command chair. "We are not the only empire in the galaxy. Others will come. Others will learn from your example," Duyun interrupted. "They will see what happens to those who threaten our children, and they will choose wisely." The screen changed again to show human fleets already leaving Earth's solar system. But these weren't the ships they had seen before. These vessels moved through space like living things, bending light around them and traveling at speeds that made faster-than-light travel look slow. "Captain Ji-hoon," Duyun said, and the screen split to show a young human male standing on the bridge of one of the new ships. "Show Admiral Tejo what his empire looks like from our perspective." Ji-hoon nodded and touched controls that seemed to respond to his thoughts rather than his hands. The view changed to show a three-dimensional map of hegemony space. Red dots marked worlds under their control, connected by lines showing trade routes and military supply chains. "Your empire controls 437 worlds," Ji-hoon said calmly. "You have 6 major fleet bases and 23 minor outposts. Your economy depends on resource extraction from conquered worlds and slave labor from subjugated populations." Tejo stared at the map. It was completely accurate, showing details that should have been impossible for outsiders to know. "How do you have this information?" "We see everything, Admiral," Yoon answered. "Past, present, and future flow together for us. We know every ship in your fleet, every plan in your strategy rooms, every fear in your commanders' hearts." "Lieutenant." "Call," Sojin was studying her instruments with growing alarm. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout hegemony space. Something is happening to our worlds." The map on the screen began to change. Red dots started turning blue, one by one, as human fleets appeared at hegemony worlds across the galaxy. But they weren't attacking the planets. Instead, they were doing something that looked impossible. "What are they doing to our colonies?" demanded Tae-Ho. Captain Ji-hoon answered from his ship. "We're freeing them, Admiral. Every world your empire enslaved, every population you oppressed, every species you crushed under your rule, we're giving them back their freedom." The screen showed scenes from across hegemony space. On world after world, the same thing was happening. Human ships would appear in orbit, and suddenly the local populations would rise up against their hegemony overlords. But it wasn't just rebellion. The humans were somehow giving the enslaved species new technology, new weapons, new hope. "This is impossible," muttered Dr. Yunbai. "You can't coordinate military action across the entire galaxy instantly. The distances are too great." Duyun smiled, and for a moment she looked almost human. "Doctor, you still think in terms of distance and time as separate things. For us, for our children, space and time are tools to be used. We can be everywhere at once because we exist in dimensions you cannot perceive." General Young-soo was watching the tactical displays with the expression of a man watching his entire world collapse. "Sir, our garrison forces are reporting defeats on every world. Not defeats ... complete routing. The locals aren't just fighting back, they're winning easily." "Because they're not fighting alone," said Ji-hoon from the screen. "Every freed world becomes part of our network. Every liberated species shares our knowledge and our strength. The galaxy is waking up, Admiral, and it's angry." Admiral Tejo slumped in his command chair as he watched his empire crumble in real time. Red dots on the map were turning blue faster than he could count them. In a matter of hours, the galactic hegemony was ceasing to exist. "Why?" he asked quietly. Why are you doing this? Daeyun's expression became serious again. Because it is. Time for the galaxy to grow up, Admiral. For too long, civilizations have conquered and enslaved each other. It is an old pattern, a childish pattern. Our children will teach the galaxy a better way. The ancient Watcher ships began to fade from view, becoming transparent and then disappearing entirely. But their presence could still be felt like a vast intelligence watching from just beyond perception. The age of empires is ending, Daeyun's voice echoed as her image faded. The age of cooperation is beginning. Your choice now is simple: adapt or be left behind. The screen went dark, leaving Admiral Tejo alone with the wreckage of everything he had believed in. Around Earth, the human fleets continued their work, spreading across the galaxy like a wave of liberation that would reshape civilization itself. The change began in the humans themselves. Captain Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of his ship as it traveled through space at speeds that bent reality around them. But something was different about him now. His eyes held flecks of the same darkness. That had been in the Watcher's eyes, and when he moved, the air around him shimmered slightly. "Status report," Ji-hoon said, but his voice carried harmonics that hadn't been there before. It was still his voice, but layered with something deeper, older. Lieutenant Bi-ora, his tactical officer, looked up from her console. Her transformation was even more obvious. Her skin had a faint luminescent quality, and her fingers moved across the control panels without actually touching them, manipulating the ship's systems through thought alone. "All liberation fleets are in position," she reported. "We have forces at 312 hegemony worlds simultaneously. Local resistance movements are coordinating perfectly with our arrival. And our people on the ground? Adapting beyond all expectations, sir?" Biora's eyes glowed softly as she accessed information from across the galaxy. Sergeant Woodjin's team on Kepler 7 just survived a direct hit from a fusion bomb. The blast barely slowed them down. Private Yunho on Tau Ceti is moving through. Enemy fortifications like they're made of paper. Ji-hoon nodded. The change was happening to all of them. Every human involved in the liberation was becoming something more than they had been. The Watcher's gifts, hidden in their DNA for thousands of years, were finally awakening. On the planet Vega Prime, Sergeant Woojin led his squad through what had once been an impregnable hegemony fortress. The alien soldiers inside were firing. Weapons that could melt steel, but the energy beams passed through the humans like they were made of light. "How are we doing this?" asked Corporal Minho as he walked through a wall of plasma fire without being harmed. "Don't question it," Woojin replied. "Just trust it. We're becoming what we were always meant to be. The fortress that should have taken days to capture fell in 30 minutes. But Woojin's team didn't destroy it. Instead, they carefully disabled the weapons and freed the thousands of alien prisoners who had been held there. These weren't enemy soldiers, but civilians from dozens of different species who had been enslaved by the hegemony. "You are free," Woojin told them in their own languages, somehow knowing words he had never learned. "Go home to your families. The age of slavery is ending." The freed prisoners stared at him in wonder. To them, he looked like a being of pure light, speaking with the voice of hope itself. They had heard stories of the Watchers from their grandparents, tales of ancient guardians who would one day return to free the galaxy. They hadn't expected those guardians to look like young humans. Meanwhile, on Earth, the transformation was spreading to every person on the planet. Dr. Yoon-suk, who had been a simple teacher just days before, found herself understanding technologies that shouldn't have been possible. She stood in one of the new construction facilities, watching molecular assemblers create starships from basic matter. "I know how these work," she said to her colleague, Dr. Sang-min. "I can see the quantum patterns, the way matter and energy dance together to create new forms." "How do I know this?" Sang-min, who had been experiencing his own changes, nodded. "We all know things we shouldn't know. It's like someone is downloading information directly into our minds." "Not someone," said a voice behind them. They turned to see a child, no more than 10 years old, but her eyes held the same dark depth as the Watcher they had seen on the broadcasts. The knowledge was always there. We're just finally ready to access it. The child was Sujin, who had been an ordinary student until 3 days ago. Now she could see across dimensions and understand the fundamental forces that held reality together. The Watchers didn't give us anything we didn't already have. They just helped us remember what we forgot. Across the galaxy, Admiral Tejo was learning exactly how powerful the humans had become. His remaining ships were scattered across 12 star systems, trying to coordinate a defense that became more hopeless with each passing hour. "Sir," reported Captain Minsu from the communication station, "we've lost contact with Command Fleet." Alpha, last transmission indicated they were being boarded by human forces. Boarded? How did humans get past their shields? They didn't go past them, sir? According to the final transmission, the humans walked through the hull like it wasn't. Their Lieutenant Call, Sojin was studying readings from their long-range sensors. "Admiral, I'm detecting impossible energy signatures from every world the humans have visited. It's like they're changing the fundamental structure of reality in those systems." Tejo pulled up the galactic map on his command screen. What he saw made his blood freeze. The blue dots representing liberated worlds weren't just scattered randomly across hegemony space. They formed a pattern, a vast network that was spreading like living tissue across the galaxy. They're not just freeing individual worlds, he realized. They're connecting them all together. On the newly liberated world of Centauri Beta, Colonel Subin was experiencing the truth of that statement firsthand. As she helped coordinate the evacuation of hegemony forces, she could feel the presence of every other human in the galaxy. More than that, she could feel the gratitude and hope of every freed species, their emotions flowing through the network like warmth through her veins. "Commander." "Duhayan," she called to her second-in-command. "Are you feeling this too?" Duhayan nodded, his eyes closed as he concentrated on the sensations flowing through the network. "It's beautiful, Colonel. I can feel entire civilizations waking up from a nightmare. Species that have been enslaved for generations are remembering what freedom feels like." But it wasn't just emotional connection. The network was sharing knowledge, technology, and capabilities across impossible distances instantly. A breakthrough in faster-than-light travel discovered on one world was immediately available to every connected civilization. A new medical technique, developed by freed scientists, was instantly known by doctors throughout the galaxy. Captain Yan Su was witnessing this phenomenon from orbit around the planet. Altair 4, her ship's sensors showed the transformation happening in real time. Cities that had been bombed into rubble were rebuilding themselves using the new molecular assembly technology. Factories that had produced weapons for the hegemony were being converted to create tools for peaceful construction. "It's not just liberation," she reported to Captain Ji-hoon. "It's transformation. Every world we touch becomes part of something larger." "The Watchers called it the Great Work," Ji-hoon replied. "The creation of a truly connected galactic civilization where no species rules over others, but all species work together." The transformation wasn't without its challenges. Not every human adapted easily to their new abilities. Some found the constant connection to other minds overwhelming. Others struggled with the moral weight of reshaping entire civilizations. Sergeant Hyjin was leading a liberation force on the industrial world of Vol 359 when he encountered his first group of humans who couldn't handle the change. 3 of his soldiers had collapsed, their minds unable to process the flood of information and sensation flowing through the network. "Get them back to the medical ship," he ordered. "Some of us aren't ready for this level of consciousness yet." But for every human who struggled with the transformation, a dozen more embraced it completely. They were becoming something new, something that had never existed in the galaxy before. Not just individuals working together, but a truly collective consciousness that retained the creativity and independence of individual thought while sharing the wisdom and knowledge of the whole. Back on Earth, High Watcher De Yun observed the transformation with satisfaction. The humans were exceeding even her expectations. They had taken the gifts hidden in their genetic code and made them into something uniquely their own. "They are ready," she said to her fellow Watchers. The galaxy's childhood is ending. Let us see what they make of their inheritance. The galactic hegemony's capital world of Terran Prime had never been attacked in its 3,000-year history. Its massive orbital defense platforms could destroy entire fleets, and its planetary shields were powered by the energy of 3 captured stars. The world was home to 50 billion citizens and the seat of an empire that had conquered half the galaxy. But now, as Admiral Tejo watched from his damaged flagship, human vessels were appearing in the system like ghosts materializing from dreams. They didn't drop out of faster-than-light travel the way normal ships did. Instead, they simply became visible, as if they had been there all along but hidden from sight. How many ships? Tejo asked, though he dreaded the answer. Captain Minsu stared at his instruments in disbelief. I can't get an accurate count, sir. The sensors keep showing different numbers. Sometimes 100 ships, sometimes 1,000, sometimes just one ship that's somehow everywhere at once. The lead human vessel was unlike anything they had seen before. It was sleek and organic-looking, more like a living creature than a machine. At its helm stood Colonel Subin, but she was no longer the simple military officer she had been weeks ago. Her transformation was complete now. She existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that the hegemony couldn't even perceive. Citizens of Terran Prime, Subin's voice broadcasted across all frequencies, reaching every communication device on the planet. This is Colonel Subin of the Terra Liberation Fleet. Your government has oppressed the galaxy for 3 millennia. That ends today. On the planet's surface, chaos was already spreading, but it wasn't the chaos of invasion or destruction. It was the chaos of awakening. The billions of citizens who had lived their entire lives under the hegemony's rule were suddenly seeing the truth about their government for the first time. Commander Duhayan led a small team that materialized directly in the capital city's central plaza. They didn't use transport ships or drop pods. They simply stepped through tiers in space itself, emerging from dimensions that existed between the spaces of normal reality. People of Terran Prime, Duhayan announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast city without any technological amplification. Your leaders told you that the hegemony brought peace and order to the galaxy. Let us show you what that peace really looked like. The air above the plaza shimmered, and suddenly everyone in the city could see holographic images of what the hegemony had done to conquered worlds. They saw species enslaved, children taken from their families, entire civilizations wiped out because they refused to submit. Most horrifying of all, they saw that much of the hegemony's wealth and technology had been built on the suffering of trillions of innocent beings. The citizens of Terran Prime had never seen these images before. Their government had hidden the truth from them, telling them that they were bringing civilization to primitive worlds. Now they understood that they had been living lives of comfort built on the bones of the innocent. Captain Yeon-su was monitoring the planetary defense systems from her ship when something unexpected happened. Instead of trying to destroy the human vessels, the massive orbital platforms simply shut down. The planetary shields flickered and died. The automated defense systems that should have been firing millions of rounds per second went silent. Sir, reported her tactical officer, the defense systems aren't malfunctioning. They're choosing not to fire. The artificial intelligences that run them are refusing to fight. This was happening throughout hegemony space. The advanced computers that managed the Empire's military and civilian infrastructure were all connected through quantum communication networks. And those networks had been quietly infiltrated by human consciousness over the past weeks. Sergeant Haijun was leading the liberation of a major military installation when he encountered something that would have been impossible just days earlier. The base's commanding officer, General Keftorin, one of the hegemony's most decorated warriors, was waiting for him in the main courtyard with his weapon laid on the ground beside him. I surrender, the alien general said simply. Not to you, but to the truth. We have seen what you showed our people. We cannot continue to serve a system built on such cruelty. This scene was being repeated across the galaxy. Hegemony military officers, Government officials and even ordinary citizens were laying down their weapons and refusing to continue supporting their empire. The network of consciousness that the humans had created wasn't just connecting liberated worlds. It was reaching into the hearts and minds of their former enemies, showing them truths they had never been allowed to see, but not everyone was ready to accept the change. In the deepest bunkers beneath Terran Prime's capital, the Hegemony's Supreme Council was meeting in emergency session. Supreme Leader Vaxcodal, who had ruled the Empire for over 2 centuries, was raging at his subordinates. How did primitive humans destroy our entire civilization in a matter of weeks? He demanded. We had the most powerful military in galactic history. Supreme Leader, said his chief military advisor carefully, perhaps we should consider negotiation. The humans have offered to— Never! Vaxcodal slammed his fist on the council table. I will not surrender to inferior beings. Activate the Omega Protocol. The other council members looked at each other in horror. The Omega Protocol was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a device that could destroy entire star systems by destabilizing their suns. It had never been used because the devastation would be so complete that it would damage the fabric of space itself. Sir, said the science advisor, the Omega device is untested. If we use it, we might destroy not just the human fleets, but our own world as well. Then so be it, Vaxcodal replied. If we cannot rule the galaxy, then no one will. Above the planet, Colonel Subin felt the change in the quantum fields around Terran Prime the moment the Omega device began charging. Through the consciousness network, she shared this information instantly with every human in the galaxy. They're going, to try to destroy the system, she reported to Captain Ji-hoon, who was coordinating liberation efforts in another sector. The energy buildup suggests a star-killer weapon. Can you stop it? Ji-hoon asked. Su-Bing closed her eyes and reached out through dimensions that normal beings couldn't perceive. She could see the weapon's energy patterns in the quantum foam of space-time itself. More importantly, she could see how to unravel them. I don't need to stop it, she said calmly. I can redirect it. What happened next would be remembered as the moment the galaxy truly changed forever. As the Omega device fired its star-destroying beam toward the local sun, Subin and her fellow humans reached out with their enhanced consciousness and gently turned the weapon's energy back on itself. The device, instead of destroying the systems, began to sing. The deadly energy was transformed into something beautiful, a harmonic resonance that spread through the quantum structure of space itself. Every being in the system, human and alien alike, could feel it as a warm, peaceful sensation that dissolved anger and fear. Supreme Leader Vaxcodal, deep in his bunker, felt the weapon's energy wash over him. But instead of the satisfaction of destruction, he experienced something he had never felt before: genuine empathy for the beings his empire had harmed. For the first time in his long life, he truly understood the suffering he had caused. He walked slowly to the surface, where Colonel Subin was waiting for him. I surrender, he said simply. Not to your military force, but to your wisdom. We were wrong about everything. Across the galaxy, the last hegemony strongholds were laying down their weapons. But they weren't being conquered. They were being healed. The network of consciousness that connected all liberated worlds was teaching them a new way to exist, not as rulers and subjects, but as partners in a vast community of mutual support and understanding. The empire that had ruled through fear was learning to live through love, and the galaxy itself was beginning to sing with the harmony of truly free civilizations working together for the first time in its history. 1 year had passed since the fall of the galactic hegemony, and the galaxy looked nothing like it had before. Where once there had been conquered worlds and enslaved populations, now there was something that had never existed in galactic history: true cooperation between thousands of different species. Ambassador G1 stood in the great hall of what had once been the hegemony's capital building on Terran Prime, but the building itself had been transformed, just like everything else. The cold metal and harsh angles had been replaced with flowing organic curves that seemed to breathe with life. The walls were transparent, showing gardens that stretched to the horizon where once there had been military installations. The Terran Alliance now includes over 1,500 worlds, Good One reported to the assembled delegates from across the galaxy. But more importantly, every single one of them joined by choice, not by conquest. The delegates represented species that had been enemies for thousands of years, but now they sat together in harmony. The Kithaneri, who had once been the hegemony's most feared warriors, worked peacefully alongside the Veltari, whose worlds they had once raided for slaves. The transformation wasn't just political, it was spiritual. Captain Jihoon, now Admiral of the Terran Defense Force, walked through the orbital stations above Earth. These weren't military bases in the old sense. They were centers of learning and cooperation where beings from across the galaxy came to share knowledge and culture. The old patterns are breaking down everywhere, he reported to the Council of Earth. Species that have fought for millennia are working together on projects that benefit everyone. The hegemony's weapon factories are being converted into research centers. Their slave camps have become schools. On a world that had once been strip-mined by hegemony corporations, former slave Kefmiran was now leading a terraforming project to restore the planet's ecology. Working beside him were humans, former hegemony citizens, and members of dozens of other species. "It's hard to believe this is the same world," said Dr. Yoon Suk, who had become one of the Alliance's leading environmental scientists. 6 months ago, this place was a wasteland. Now look at it. They stood on a hill overlooking valleys filled with new forests and clean rivers. The air smelled of growing things instead of industrial chemicals. Wildlife that had been thought extinct was returning as ecosystems healed with technologies that worked with nature instead of against it. "The humans taught us something we had forgotten," Kefmiran said, "that we are all connected to each other and to the worlds we live on. The hegemony tried to separate us from that connection. Now we are remembering what it means to be whole." But the transformation hadn't been without challenges. Admiral Tejo, who was now serving as a military advisor to the Alliance, had spent months learning to work with the very people he had once tried to conquer. "I still don't understand how you forgave us," he said to Colonel Subin during one of their planning sessions. "My people killed thousands of humans. I personally ordered the bombardment of your cities." Subin looked at him with eyes that held depths of understanding he was still learning to perceive. "We didn't forgive you, Admiral. We helped you remember who you really are underneath all the conditioning and fear. The person who ordered those attacks isn't the same person sitting here now." It was true. The network of consciousness that connected all Alliance worlds had done more than share knowledge and coordinate activities. It had healed the psychological wounds that centuries of oppression and violence had left on entire civilizations. Dr. Sang Min, who had become the Alliance's chief psychologist, was studying this phenomenon from his research station on Luna. "We're seeing something unprecedented," he reported to his colleagues. "Entire species are healing from generational trauma. Behavior patterns that seemed hardwired into their genetics are changing as they reconnect with their true nature." On worlds throughout the galaxy, former enemies were not just working together, but genuinely caring for each other. Hegemony soldiers who had once enforced brutal occupation were now helping rebuild the communities they had destroyed. Scientists who had created weapons of mass destruction were developing technologies to heal environmental damage. But perhaps the most remarkable change was happening on Earth itself. The planet that had been threatened with destruction was now the beating heart of galactic civilization. But it wasn't ruling over other worlds the way the hegemony had. Instead it was serving them. General Kijun, who had led Earth's defense, now spent his time coordinating disaster relief efforts across the galaxy. When natural catastrophes struck Alliance worlds, Earth's response ships would arrive within hours, bringing not just aid but the knowledge and technology needed for long-term recovery. "We learned something from the Watchers," Kijun explained to a group of young Alliance officers. "True strength isn't the power to dominate others. It's the power to lift others up." The Watchers themselves had been seen less frequently as the months passed, but their influence was still felt everywhere. High Watcher Dayun appeared occasionally to offer guidance, but mostly she watched from the spaces between dimensions as her human children led the galaxy into a new age. "They have exceeded our hopes," she told her fellow Watchers during one of their gatherings in the quantum realm. "We prepared them to be guardians, but they chose to be healers as well." The network of consciousness that connected Alliance worlds was growing stronger and more sophisticated every day. New species joined regularly, not through conquest or coercion, but because they were attracted to the peace and prosperity they saw in Alliance worlds. Ambassador Yansu was welcoming the latest group of worlds to join the Alliance. The Zephyrian Republic had been one of the hegemony's oldest enemies, fighting a bitter war for over 2 centuries. Now their representatives sat in the Alliance Council, working on joint projects with former hegemony worlds. "How do we know this will last?" asked Chancellor Valtorn of the Zephyrians. "Throughout galactic history, every alliance has eventually fallen to war and division." Yansu smiled and gestured to the great viewing wall that showed the galaxy as it existed now. Instead of the harsh borders and contested territories of the old maps, this one showed flowing networks of connection and cooperation. "Because this isn't like the old alliances," she replied. "Those were built on shared interests that could change. This is built on shared consciousness. We're not separate nations working together. We're parts of a larger whole that includes all of us." The proof of her words could be seen everywhere. When the agricultural world of New Harmony suffered crop failures due to climate disruption, dozens of worlds immediately sent aid without being asked. When the research station at Volf 359 made a breakthrough in quantum medicine, the knowledge was instantly available to healers throughout the galaxy. Former Supreme Leader Vaxcodal, who had tried to destroy the solar system rather than surrender, was now working as a counselor helping other former hegemony officials adapt to the new reality. The transformation in his personality was so complete that those who had known him before could barely recognize him. "I spent 2 centuries believing that strength meant making others fear you," he said to a group of recovering war criminals. "Now I understand that real strength means helping others become their best selves." The galaxy was learning to dream again. Species that had forgotten their own cultures during centuries of oppression were rediscovering art, music, and literature. New forms of beauty were being created through the collaboration of minds that had once been enemies. On Earth, in the same command center where the first warnings had been received, Captain Minsu looked out at the stars with wonder. The universe that had once seemed full of threats and enemies now felt like a vast garden where countless forms of life could flourish together. "We were warned not to touch Earth," he said quietly to his human colleague, Major Dongwook. "I understand." Now why the warning was necessary? Not to protect you from us, but to protect us from missing the greatest opportunity in galactic history. The galaxy had indeed burned, just as the warning had promised. But it had burned away the old patterns of fear, hatred, and domination, leaving space for something beautiful to grow. The empire that had ignored the warning was gone, but in its place was something far greater, a truly united galaxy, where every being could reach their highest potential. The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And in the vast network of consciousness that connected billions of worlds and trillions of beings, the galaxy itself had finally learned to sing in harmony.